Welcome, everyone, to the 12th ever episode of the Open Throne Podcast. I'm your host, Cole Houck. Today, joined by my good friend, Landon Cotronis, back to talk more college basketball. We got Sweet 16 Elite Eight games coming in the next 4 days, ton of basketball. We've had a couple of days off, but I've been missing this. How you been feeling?
Yeah, it's really exciting time in March. Ton of games going on. Looking forward to tomorrow night. So let's get into it.
Yeah, we got 4 games going on for the next 2 days, and then the Elite Eight games back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday as well. Make sure, before you get in this podcast, please like and subscribe. We started growing a little bit, so I'm curious to see what that does. We decided to get into these games, man. It's a lot of fun. So the first games we got is the East bracket. It's going to be Duke versus St. John's. This one, I'm a little bit surprised St. John's is here. I picked them, but I thought that it was going to be tough to get beat Kansas out. This is interesting because Duke has looked really shaky in their first 2 games. They start off really slow in both TCU and the Siena game, where they're down at the half. Caleb Foster has an outside chance to come in. I don't think he's going to come back to the Final Four, but, we'll see what happens there with his injury. Evans has looked really bad as well. He's shot 4 of 16 so far, 2 of 8 from 3 in both of his games. I think he's way too good of a shooter for that to continue happening. I think they need to attack the rim a lot against St. John's. I think St. John's has solid, post defense, but not anything that Duke has not seen and gone against already. Draw a bunch of fouls. I like Evans to go off and make some momentum swinging shots for the most part. I will say Duke had 17 turnovers against TCU, and they didn't look too great in the Siena game with the turnovers either. Kansas had 16 turnovers against the Red Storm, so I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. If Duke can maintain their turnovers, I think they have a good chance here. Ian Jackson is on St. John's. He played at Carolina. You remember him last year. He has not looked good against Duke, and he takes the most shots off the bench, so that's going to be kind of interesting. I hope he can play a little better than he did when he was on the Tar Heels. Ejiofor, Zuby Ejiofor is usually the guy that they go to on offense. I'm not sure how he's supposed to do against Malik Brown and Patrick Ngongba. I don't think he's going to have too much of a game offensively. I mean, maybe he'll get some free throws, but it's going to be tough. Both those guys are real good defenders. So I'm curious who else is going to be able to score on St. John's. Bryce Hopkins is their next best guy, and I think he needs to hit some shots. The unfortunate thing is that he shot 6 of 9 in the Kansas game, which is just amazing. I don't think that's replicable at all. So I think I have to take Duke, even though I don't want to. What do you think?
Yeah, St. John's is definitely playing much better basketball than Duke is right now. St. John's is shooting the ball pretty well. I think I saw a stat somewhere that was talking about St. John's and how they haven't made double-digit threes since like February or January, some crazy stat like that. But they're definitely shooting the ball real well, and that's what it's going to take to knock off Duke. But ultimately, I think Duke's just too athletic, too long. All of their guys have real long wingspans. Getting Ngongba back definitely helped them. I was surprised to see him out there, to be honest with you, because after the game, I don't know if you saw this, but he actually had the boot back on. But yeah, I was surprised to see him out there, to be honest with you. But ultimately, I think he was a game changer against TCU at least. And I think that Duke will take care of St. John's.
The next game we got in the East is Michigan State and UConn. And me and you were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, so I'm a little bit conflicted just like you are. They have UConn favored in this game, and I don't really see why. I'll go ahead and spoil it. I have Michigan State winning this game. I think it's a pretty good matchup for them. UConn fouls a lot, and they don't really hit free throws at a good rate. Michigan State does hit free throws, and they don't typically foul, so that should work out pretty well for them as far as the points go. If you're cheering for Michigan State, you're going to really need Jackson Kohler and Cohen Carr to feast inside and get a lot of free throws. I think they're big enough to be able to neutralize the bigs of Caravan and Terrace Reed offensively for UConn. My only concern is that Michigan State's been shooting 46% from the 3 so far this tournament, which for this roster is absolutely not sustainable. I'm a little bit worried about that. And UConn is actually one of the better teams, top 25 in the nation at defending the 3. They hold teams at 30% from 3s. So I'm worried that Fears is going to be able to set up a bunch of guys, a bunch of shooters by driving in, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to hit. I think the X factor for this game is going to be Kerr Tang. He's like a good 3-and-D guy. So he's shooting at a pretty clip. I need him to kind of do better and hit a lot of 3s going here. For UConn, Solo Ball has been playing awful. He's not super efficient as is, but he's been shooting 17% from the field. And I think he's going to hit shots eventually. Can't keep, expecting him to shoot that poorly. And then Braylon Mullins is their main guy. He needs to become their main guy, really, and take a ton of shots. I need him to shoot a ton of 3s and try and keep UConn in this game, potentially. What do you think?
Yeah. First off, I just wanted to touch on the coaching matchups in both this game and the Duke game. Pretty legendary coaching matchups that they somehow all put in one region, which was interesting. But yeah, I definitely think it's a interesting matchup between Michigan State and UConn. Just they're kind of almost similar, like you mentioned, in roster construction. But yeah, I mean, Michigan State's got a tall task in limiting Terrace Reed. He's a real good player for UConn. But Michigan State's shooting the ball real well, and they've been playing really good as of late. So, I think I like Michigan State in this game. I say that very lightly just because I know, with any good coach, anything can happen really. And it's two great coaching matchups. So I feel like I'm going to go with Michigan State on this game, but I feel like it's definitely a coin flip.
It's always tough to pick against Dan Hurley. I said that in the other podcast, is that he's proved me wrong so many times. My only issue is that they've looked so poor in these games. I mean, that guy to put up 31 and 27 to beat Furman by 10 or 11 points. And they played UCLA really bad for the first probably almost 3/4 of that game. They took over at the very end, but Donovan Dent shot 4 of 17. I mean, that honestly isn't going to happen again either. So I think they've kind of gotten lucky in a way for where they are. That's why I'm picking Michigan State as well. So we both picked Michigan State here to go against Duke. I originally picked Michigan State to win this game in my bracket. This is what has as the Elite Eight, and I picked Michigan State to make it to the Final Four. I'm gonna stick with that. But I think if Foster comes back, which I don't think he's going to, I think Duke probably does win this game, assuming that he hits at an okay clip and he's fully healthy and he's agile like he's supposed to be. I think Michigan State has a lot of advantages over this Duke team. Michigan State's good at everything except for turnovers, and Duke has not been able to generate turnovers this tournaments. They had 16 turnovers. I said 17 turnovers in the TCU game. So if they can't force turnovers from Michigan State, I don't know if they'll be able to keep up offensively, especially with the lack of guys. And I don't trust Duke's depth at this point in the tournament. I think Evans and Boozer will score a lot of points. I think they'll go off pretty well. But I don't know who else is going to contribute on that roster offensively if Foster's not back and Ngongba doesn't do a ton offensively.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun game. And I just actually remember that Duke beat Michigan State earlier in the season 66-60. And I was just looking through some of their stats, and Isaiah Evans didn't play good. It was mainly a Boozer show. So really, it's Michigan State if Michigan State can stop Boozer. I mean, he had 18 and 15 in their first matchup. So that's pretty insane. I'm not sure if I don't think Foster will be back by the Elite Eight, but I think if Duke can make it to the Final Four, I think he is going to come back. And I actually had Duke winning this matchup. I actually had Duke making it to the championship. So I think I'm going to stick with Duke, but Duke hasn't looked good. So, I mean, it's definitely a tough call. Michigan State's looked really well. Duke, on the other hand, not so well. So I'll see how Duke looks against St. John's. But yeah, I'm going to take Duke in this matchup.
Yeah, I got you. I do really like that revenge angle from Tom Izzo. I think I forgot they played two. I looked at it. Duke really won that game off of free throws. Pretty much everything else was even. Neither team really forced a lot of turnovers too. It was only 13 turnovers total combining between the two teams. So I like Michigan State to get it done. I like Michigan State to kind of, like I said, maintain and neutralize everybody else that isn't named Isaiah Evans or Cameron Boozer. Now, granted, the depth guys like the other Boozer guy and Dame Sarr have looked better than they did when they played early in the year. But I still think it's going to be tough for those guys to get good looks on that Michigan State defense. So I'm sticking with Sparty. It's a tough pick. I'm sure they won't be favored, but I'm gonna have faith in Tom Izzo. It's been a while since he got this far, so I think it's time for him to bring him to the Final Four at least.
Yeah, and looking at that box score, Duke was able to hold Fears to 0 of 10 shooting and 13 assists.
You said
That was
13.
Yeah, 13.
Honestly, I can see that happening again. I've been on record a couple of times saying that Jeremiah Fears is maybe the best passer in all of college basketball, but I don't trust anything on offense that he has besides the passing. Like I don't think he's a good shooter. I don't think he's an okay driver, but he doesn't finish all the time. He's probably good at free throws, but doesn't draw a ton of free throws. I don't have a lot of faith in that guy besides playmaking and setting up the offense.
Yeah, I mean, he can dish the ball. He reminds me of almost like Chris Paul, how he was. But yeah, Kurd Tang was 0 for 5, so they really had three people. And you're not going to beat Duke like that. But maybe they'll figure some other schemes out to slow down Boozer, but that's a tall task. So we'll see.
It is. And it's tough too, because like we're predicting that Michigan State is going to get into this game when they're not even supposed to win, according to, I guess Vegas and everybody else. It's supposed to be UConn. That would be a good game too. Although I'm just so low on UConn the way they've been playing. So I don't see that they get past Michigan State. And I think if they do get past Michigan State, I don't think they stand a chance against Duke, honestly.
Yeah, and I saw one stat that said every national championship that Duke's won, they've beat St. John's. So that's
Are you
something to keep in
serious?
mind. Yeah.
Wow, I wish I would have seen that. That's crazy. The next region that we have is the South region, and this is I think the only other time besides the Duke Michigan State game where teams already played are going to play again. And this is Iowa Nebraska. I bet very little brackets in America had this as the Sweet 16 matchup coming out of this part of the region here. But I wanted to first speak on Iowa. Nebraska's had a really good story too, but I am really happy about Iowa. I think people should not be as surprised that Iowa's as good as they are, because 5 of 8 of those starting or like the rotation guys from Iowa were from that Drake program. They didn't bring in a ton of guys. They got a guy from Robert Morris. They had a freshman come in. So they aren't that different than Drake is, and they made it into the tournament out of this, stacked, as we can see right now, Big Ten. So that system and the way that they play has gotten them this far in the Big Ten. It should not shock anybody that they can compete with the big dogs and other conferences and do this good. Now, I didn't see them beating Florida. I definitely had that one wrong, but they have been killing it. I'm really happy for them. They're statistically a really off rebounding team typically, but they have out rebounded Florida, which Florida is statistically, I think, the best rebounding team in the nation. And they're just a really steady team. They're good at a decent bit of things, but they're really good at turnovers and they're efficient from all three levels. When they played Nebraska, they split it. They played them really early in the year. They won at home by, I think it was 5 points. And when they won that game, Nebraska only took 44 shots. They played a stupid slow game. It was really an Iowa game. Price Sanford was the leading scorer for the Cornhuskers, and he only took 7 shots. He went 3 for 7. They did play again in Nebraska. That was Nebraska's senior nights. I was watching that game live. They won in overtime. It was super fun to watch. What's interesting is that Nebraska forced 19 turnovers out of Iowa in that game. That is not sustainable. That's not going to happen again. I sincerely doubt that the Cornhuskers can force that. And Iowa actually, despite them not being a great rebounding team typically, actually out-rebounded Nebraska both times. They actually out-rebounded them by 13 in that first game too. So I think it's actually like a pretty good matchup for Iowa. I think they have a good shot. And they want to get revenge. Just said that's still pretty fresh in their brain. It wasn't that long ago that they lost in Nebraska. The other thing too that I think is not sustainable is Cale Jacobson off the bench. He averages 4.6 points for Nebraska. He led the team in scoring and went 6 for 6 from the field. That guy, he scored more points. He hit more shots than he averages. I don't think that's going to happen again. So I think Nebraska's the better team, and I like them. I said before I liked them. I didn't think they were going to be this good, but I'm happy for them. But the way I was playing and all these factors going into, I think them being better right now, I lean towards the Hawkeyes. What about you?
Yeah, I kind of have a much different take than you, honestly. I think that, since Iowa played so good against Florida, they're going to come out real flat. And I feel like Nebraska's the type of team to sort of jump on that, knock down a bunch of threes and build an early lead, in which case I think Iowa will have a tough time coming back if they're able to do that. I just I'm a believer in if a team gets, a big upset win, their next game usually doesn't look that good. I also am really surprised about Nebraska. I thought that they were going to get upset in their first game, and they really surprised me. They played really well, shot the ball really well, got good inside presence. So I think I'm going to go with Nebraska on this matchup just because I'm not a big fan of teams bouncing back from big wins like that.
No, I totally agree about like I call them letdown spots, and I really am a big believer as well in that being a thing. I like a lot of things going for Iowa right now, not just them beating Florida, but again, how I think that they could match up against Nebraska and already have in two prior games. The only thing is that The way Iowa beats these teams is because teams aren't ready for, a bunch of factors, but they aren't ready to see how Iowa plays, why they got out to, the lead in Florida and why Florida couldn't come back. Nebraska's seen them twice already. They know how Iowa plays. They beat them in one of those games, so they know how to beat that team. It's going to be a little bit difficult, but I still I think I like Iowa. This sounds crazy out loud, too, taking Iowa this deep, but they're a solid team, and I'm going to keep cheering for them.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a interesting matchup just because they have played already, and I think there's a lot of maybe unique things that they're going to try and implement both from both sides. They probably won't have seen before that might kind of throw the other side off. Maybe new plays or because they've had a week since their last game, or roughly a week. So I think it'll be interesting to see what new things that both teams put in and how they can stop.
No, I know what you mean. I also think some of this is me just kind of cheering for upsets. I tend to do that naturally. And again, 5 of the 8 guys are from Drake. Ben McCollum brought all those guys over together. So I feel like I'm basically cheering for Drake in this spot. So I want Drake disguised as Iowa to make it to the Elite Eight if possible.
Yeah, that's actually a crazy stat that 5 out of the 8 are from Drake. I saw another graphic that was talking about how these like smaller schools like Drake used to be and all these other smaller schools they kind of hurt themselves when they go on runs like this deep into the tournament or even winning 1 or 2 games just because nowadays with NIL and all that the players just leave and go to bigger programs so the coach too they're all just leaving and finding bigger and better places to go so.
I mean, you saw the Sienna guy, right? He's at Syracuse now. He didn't even win a game. He beat Duke for a half, not more than half, probably three-quarters of that game with 5 starting players, and they sent him over to Syracuse pretty much immediately. Granted he was on that championship team in 2003, but that was really interesting. Apparently, that's all it takes. Sienna's also a pretty solid team as far as that conference goes. But yeah, it really is like if you do good as a mid-major, stuff gets taken away from you a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I saw that Sienna's was it Sienna's? I'm pretty sure it was Sienna's best player that the kid that knocked down all those threes. He entered the transfer portal, and I'm sure he'll go somewhere half decent and get a
He might
pretty
he might go to Iowa. Funny enough.
yeah he might yeah.
The next game we got on here is Illinois and Houston. And for me personally, this is the toss up between this and the Arizona Arkansas game, as far as the game I'm most excited for in the Sweet 16. This one's going to be a lot of fun. These 2 teams I think are the hottest teams in the country right now. But I've been kind of up and down at Illinois. I need to see them like win a game like this because I said we talked about before in the other podcast a while ago that like they are so good at everything. Analytically, they're one of the best teams in the nation, and yet somehow it just is not quite translating in big games to winning. So I need to see if they are fraudulent. They keep letting me down. My big question for this game is if Illinois can attack inside because they are a much bigger team. I said before that I think their 8 rotation guys averages like 6'9", and their bench guys averages like 6'11", which is just unbelievable. So I mean, some of these mid-major teams don't even have a 6'11" guy on the roster. So they're much bigger. It's gonna be interesting to see if they can get inside. Houston's got a really solid post defense. Their only weakness, similar to Michigan State, is turnovers. But if they don't turn the ball over, I think they probably do win this game. The issue with that is that Houston is 5th in the nation in turnover margin. Kelvin Sampson's system over there has always been defense, physical, force turnovers, force ridiculous shots. The other thing that he's been doing a lot recently is rebounding. I said, Illinois is very tall. Houston in their first 2 games are averaging 16 more rebounds than their opponents, which one of those is Idaho, but the other one was Texas A&M. I mean, that's a fairly legit program. So I'm interested to see how this goes. My question as well is if Houston, their vets and Uzon and Sharp can carry the offense. In case Flemings has trouble, obviously he's a freshman. And this is kind of their first real opponent. They kicked the snot out of A&M, a week ago. So I'm gonna pick Houston until I see Illinois do something. I keep saying that, but if they win this game, then I might be on the Illinois train. We'll just have to see how this game goes. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick Houston as well in this game. After watching Illinois and VCU, Illinois got out to maybe a 10 or 12 point lead, and then VCU kind of changed the momentum of the game, and they kind of went like more defensive and slowed the game down and that sort of thing. And that kind of threw Illinois off, and that's similar to what Houston plays in a way. They like to, like you mentioned, they like to play slow-ish and physical get on the boards and that sort of thing. So, if VCU is able to do it against Illinois after like a 12-point game and they were able to cut it down pretty close down at halftime there. I mean, ultimately, Illinois pulled that out, but I think that Houston can use that to their advantage, and they are the more physical team. Illinois defense just has they can get streaky and they can get hot, but I'm gonna have to go Houston in this matchup.
That's what I feel like too. And then, so for my Elite Eight game, I have Iowa playing Houston. It is still very funny seeing Iowa in here, but again, I'm cheering for the Hawkeyes in this story. But I think this is where it comes to a close. I'm not going to talk too much about this. I see them winning this or losing this game probably about 50-60. I'm going to compare this to the Iowa Clemson game in the first round, where it's just going to be really slow, hard fought, and Iowa's offense is going to look terrible, just like Clemson's did. And Houston won't look great either, but I think they're going to be ahead for a lot of it. Maybe even get like a 15-point lead. Iowa going to run, but it should be low scoring. I think Houston's going to have for the most part. The only hope I think for Iowa is if they light it up from three, which they can do. They've done before. But if they don't hit threes at a good clip, they're not going to win this game. This plays too slow, which goes into Houston's advantage. I like them for sure moving on to the Final Four.
Yeah, I think even if Illinois were to beat Houston, I think the winner of that game will take care of. I mean, I had Nebraska beating Iowa, but I think the winner of Illinois Houston will move on to the Final Four. I just think that those two programs are kind of above what Iowa and Nebraska are at right now. Iowa's playing really good basketball, but I just think Houston especially, they just have too much talent. They'll be able to shut down Iowa's shooters, Nebraska's shooters. So I think Houston's going to move on to the Final Four in this region.
I do want to say one thing before we move on and crown Houston the champion of the South region is I do not have faith in their depth. I said their starting five is very good, very solid. They got a really, really good starters over there. I have so little faith in their bench. The Mercy Miller, I think is his name. He's looked better, and that guy's definitely going to need to provide offense for him at some point in this tournament if they want to keep winning. But it's going to come back to bite him eventually, and I don't know if it's going to be in one of these two games. But if it does, just know I was worried about it.
Yeah, that's definitely a topic of concern for them. I just feel like they have it relatively easy. I mean, Illinois is a good team, but if they were in the East with Duke and Michigan State and all them, I would definitely pick them to lose. But just because of who they're playing and not having to face Florida, I'm definitely liking Houston a little bit more.
Yeah, imagine if Houston plays Iowa in the Elite Eight game to get in the Final Four. Everybody would be calling them frauds.
Yeah.
Let's transition over to the West here, where this is the Arizona Arkansas game. I said I was super excited about this too. Tom from the Sports Guys was happy he came on the other day. He had some good things to say about Arkansas, and it kind of changed my opinion on him a little bit. He says they play a lot like Arizona. And at first, I didn't really see it, but the more I think about it, it is there where they have a lot of guard depth. They have some bigs that are more than serviceable and can provide pretty good minutes for you. They play fast and they play pretty good defense, although Arkansas is definitely worse than Arizona is. And they don't take a ton of threes. Arizona is kind of notorious, at least in my head, for not shooting threes. Arkansas doesn't take near as many threes as I thought either. They are also like very middle of the pack as far as the entire Division One is in 3-point attempts. They both shoot at a pretty good percentage, but it's not a ton of attempts there. I want to say Arkansas profiles to me as a team that goes far in March. I think there's a kind of a stereotype out there about guard heavy teams being able to make it pretty far in March, and there is some facts behind that. Arkansas is that team. 78% of their points, I did the math, 70% of their points are scored by players who are considered guards on ESPN. A lot of them are 6'3" to 6'6". And obviously the leader of that, the head of that snake is Darius Acuff. He has been ridiculous. What's it called? Tom called him Russell Westbrook with the jump shot, which is a terrifying thought if you ask me. He's averaging 30 points per game in his first two games. Granted, they've scored a lot of points in these games, but it's been on 49, 45, 88 splits. He's been killing it. He's been the hub of the offense, been a system by itself. So I'm really excited to see what he looks like against Arizona. Not only have good defensive guards, but it's impossible to score in the paint down there on those bigs and the depth they got over there in the forwards. So I'm curious how that looks. I think Brazil and Ewing are pretty good bigs. Like I said, I wanted to seek their praises a little bit, but I just do not see where they compete with the versatility of the Arizona bigs. They got Toby Owaki off the bench and those two starting guys that can kind of do a little bit of everything as well for Arizona. It's gonna be really tough to score in there. I think that's gonna be difficult for Arkansas. And they're also pretty bad at guarding inside the paint, which is, like I said before, is a lot of what Arizona does on offense. So I can see Arkansas getting out to an early lead, playing a fast-paced game that Arizona is not 100% used to, but Arizona should take care of this game down the stretch, I'm pretty sure. What do you think?
Yeah, this game's I'm really looking forward to this game because it's, it all comes down to can Arizona stop A Cuff, and that's a really, really tall task for them. Arizona's definitely a more physical team. They got a lot of depth they can rely on, but Arkansas can shoot the ball pretty well. They have other pieces around A Cuff. Billy Richmond's been playing really well. Malik Thomas, I think he had like 20 points or so the other night. And then, like you mentioned, Brazil and Ewin have all been playing really well. I really want to take Arkansas in this game. At the same time, I feel like I got to go Arizona in this situation. I feel like every year Coach Calipari has a real good team like this, real good guards and that sort of thing. And they're like one piece short. And I feel like that's kind of how this team is. If you just added, one more even real good role player or off the bench or something, Arkansas could maybe pull this out and make it to the Final Four. But I'm gonna have to go with Arizona in this matchup.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Then the other game we got going on in the West region is Purdue and Texas. And like I said, Texas has had an amazing story. This is the last I'm going to say this, but I keep saying that as an NC State fan, I was more worried about Texas than I was anybody else except for Purdue. And now we're in this situation where Texas beat out Gonzaga and they beat out BYU. So I think they got to where I thought NC State could have gotten to. I think it was a pretty good run, but this is where I think it ends for Texas. Purdue has looked really good, and Texas just in theory should be worse than the rest of these teams are. I think that'll come in eventually. Volca Titus will continue to have success. I'm pretty sure. I think that Purdue is a little bit weak as far as post defense goes, and he's going to put up pretty good numbers. And I will say this: if Texas can finally hit their threes, I think they will be able to beat Purdue because they've actually been winning these games without shooting too hot. I think eventually their numbers should average out and hit a pretty good clip. So we'll see if that is end up being this game. I will say, I keep talking about this stuff. I don't like that Purdue shot such good numbers against Miami. They shot 53, 57, 95% from the field, three-pointer, and free throws against Miami. None of that seems sustainable. Miami is a very good defense, so I think eventually they're going to come back down to earth and shoot poor numbers. I'm not sure it's going to be against Texas, though. Texas defense has been playing a lot better than they usually have been, at least for the entire regular season, these last few games. And I think it's just going to wear down eventually. They don't have the depth that Purdue does. I think Purdue's going to hit their shots again today. I'm predicting something like a 80 to 70 game due to their depth. And I think Braden Smith passing it and Lawyer Shooter are going to come in clutch, and they're gonna take care of the Longhorns here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the end of Texas as well. Braden Smith and company, they just have a lot of um, experience playing in March Madness and in the tournament. But Volkatitis has been playing really well, and I was actually surprised because I remember last time State played him early in the season, he didn't look all that great, and then now he's averaging probably 20 points and 10 rebounds or something like that. But yeah, Purdue just has too much experience in March and with Trey Kaufman Wren and Fletcher Lawyer and all that. And they have some size in there too, I really like I think his name's Jacobson off the bench, their 7-2 guy on Purdue. I really like that matchup with Volkatitis actually. If I think their starting center is CJ Cox. If he gets, in foul trouble or whatever, I really like that matchup with Volkatitis. But it'll be interesting. But yeah, I definitely think that Texas will lose by probably, I'm going to go with 15 or so. I'm going to say Purdue win by about 15.
I think if Volcatitis gets shut down too, there's no way where they don't lose by 10 or 15 points at least, right? I mean, especially the way they've been playing around him, kind of. It's not heliocentricism, but it's kind of getting up there where it's like this guy has actually been getting a ton of touches, not just getting boards like he had been all season, but actually like getting a lot of touches on offense and taking hooks and just ridiculous things, hooking up people in the post.
Yeah, they've been feeding him a lot more than what I remember, and I remember, them kinda being surrounded by Jordan Pope and, hitting threes and that Swain guy beating people off the dribble, that sort of thing. I don't remember them being like a playing through Volcatitis, but, I guess they've changed, and it's obviously been working for him, so, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I will say this too. I've been waiting for Dalen Swain to kind of go off on a game. He's been playing pretty good, not necessarily like bad numbers by any means, but I've been waiting for him to have 25 ish, 30 points one night. They're going to need him, especially if Vogatitis is minimized a little bit. They're going to need him to go off offensively. So it's that, and then it's hitting threes, not just Pope, but other guys stepping in. We'll see, but I don't think Longhorns are going to be able to beat Purdue personally.
Yeah, I also think Purdue will just wear down Texas, like you said. Texas doesn't have a ton of depth, so I think Purdue will just wear them down. They're kind of a pound inside ish team, other than lawyers. So
So we both have Arizona moving on. We both got Purdue going moving on. This one's going to be difficult for me to predict, but I'm going to have Arizona just because I think that they have a lot more depth than Purdue does. And I think that they're going to wear down Purdue, going to keep playing their style. The way Purdue's been shooting, they definitely have a chance to stay in this game and actually maybe even beat Arizona. But Arizona's looked very good. Again, I think this time of the tournament, depth is going to come in handy, and Arizona is probably the deepest team in the nation.
yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Purdue in this game. I I really like that. They have Braden Smith, who's been in the tournament. They have Coffin Wren. They have Lawyer. So, all these pieces, they have experience. They don't have a ton of depth, but, they're arguably, them and Texas have been playing really good basketball. But I think I'm going to take Purdue over Arizona, just a slight upset in this to move to the Final Four.
Anthony Del Orso off the bench for Arizona, he shot 1 for 5 in the Utah State game. If they can get past Arkansas, I'm gonna call it now. This is gonna be the Anthony Del Orso game where he's gonna go off. He always has these games, just a couple games of the year so far, where he's hit 4 or 5 threes. He's hit momentum swinging plays, clutch shots, and he's won them games with his ability to get mid range or finish behind the arc. I think this is gonna be the game where he comes off the bench and gives him 15 really crucial points down the stretch.
Yeah, it's funny you mention him because he always has his like legacy game whenever Koa Pete like isn't playing good. He always just plays really well when Arizona seems to have a bad game, which I mean that's what makes Arizona so good is, him off the bench and he can score 20 points a game when they need it. So
Right. They can afford stuff like that even when their guards aren't hitting. It's because they got those guys coming off. And again, Toby Awaka on defense, man, unreal. I like his game a lot. The last region we have is the Midwest region. And this game, I want to try and get this game to be closer than it is, but I've just not really been high on Alabama for a long time. I'm excited to watch it though, because I want to see how Michigan plays in Alabama's style. I think Michigan is going to win the rebounding margin pretty comfortably. They are probably the best rebounding team in the nation that isn't Florida, and obviously Florida's not around anymore. I don't think Michigan's forwards can stay in front of Lindenberg and Morris Johnson Jr. It's going to be fun to see how that happens. And I think the team is also very deep, so I don't think they're going to tire out playing Alabama style, except for Mara. I'm a big believer in Mara, but I don't think he's got the greatest conditioning from what I can tell. They don't play him a ton, even though he's one of the better guys out there. So I'm curious to see how much he gets played and if he gets kind of played off the court because Bama's running up and down all the time. I like Michigan in this because Bama will foul a lot. I think Philon could also struggle against Cadeau. Cadeau's a good defender, and he's good. He's a pretty similar size and kind of like the way Philon plays. I think Cadeau could stay in front of him without fouling. So I think if Philon doesn't score, there's no way this team can keep up with Michigan, especially as fast as they play. I will say Bama's had 6 guys who have scored double digits so far in the first 2 games because Holloway's not been there. But I'm not sure the depth is going to continue to be as good as they are scoring wise. And Aiden Sherrill, I watched all that Hofstra game. He had 15 boards in the Hofstra game to keep. I think he's going to need to do that again to be able to keep the possessions up and play as many possessions as Michigan does. And I just don't see that happening as big as the Wolverines are. So I think it's going to be an exciting game. And again, I'm really excited to see what Michigan looks like. But I think it's going to get worn down by the end of. Michigan's going to take care of business, probably win this game by 10 or 12 points, let it balloon out at the end.
yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you on this game. I think Michigan's definitely gonna get it done. but it's going to be a tall task. I mean, Alabama is going to shoot a ton of threes. You know, they're always known for taking threes, so it's just going to be mainly if, you know, Michigan can stop them a few times and make more twos and they can make threes really. But Michigan has definitely the more physical team, and it's just going to be if they can slow them running up and down the court. It's definitely going to be a high scoring game, so it'll be real exciting to watch. But I just think that Michigan just has too many pieces for Alabama, especially with the Alabama's guard out right now. So
I definitely agree. Like I said, I think it'd be a ton of fun to watch. Be a really fast paced game. Two pretty good offenses playing against each other as well. But I don't really see a world where Alabama wins this game, to be honest with you. The next game we got here is Tennessee and Iowa State. This one's funny to me because, first off, I originally picked Iowa State, and I've gone back and forth on this a lot. I've said that both these teams were not as good as everybody thinks they are. I said Tennessee doesn't really scare me at the beginning of this. And that's I've been saying consistently Iowa State is a fake shooting team. And this is where I'm gonna go fully all in on this theory here. Because I've told you before, I don't understand how a team can be really bad at free throws, but really good at shooting 3-pointers. And I looked into the numbers, I finally figured it out. They are 14th in the nation at 3-pointers percentage wise, and it's about 39%, which is a really great number. But they only have one guy who plays about 15 minutes that shoots threes above 35%, which, you know, is still a pretty good number, but that's about league average, maybe a little below in the NBA. And that's Momcilovic, who you will not hear me disrespect this guy. Momcilovic is fantastic. I don't know why he isn't in more conversations as like the best player in the nation or one of the best and rising up draft boards a lot. He's shooting 50% from three. He's the outlier. He's dragging this number up. He'll probably still shoot pretty well, but nobody else can shoot around him. And Tennessee is the only team, not the only team, but one of the only teams that you need to be able to shoot shots on the outside because they are real tough on inside. Go ask Virginia. Virginia was a really great team inside, and they got bullied down there. They have three starters that are 6'10 plus. They had a men's tall as a small forward. And they got Jalen Carey off the bench, who is 6'8, 270. I mean, he's literally a football player out there playing basketball. He's in the wrong sport. He bullied Virginia as well, just pushing their 7-foot skinny guys around. Iowa State is a really great turnover team. They're probably the best turnover team without getting fouls called on them, so that's really solid. Jefferson, I didn't mean to go this long without talking about Joshua Jefferson. He is a game time decision, but people are optimistic he's going to come back after rolling his ankle against Tennessee State. If he does come back, I think Iowa State's going to win this game. I just think they have too much on offense, and I think they can kind of compete with the size that Tennessee has a little bit more. But if he's not there, I think I have to pick Tennessee. He's been playing amazingly. I spoke his praise in the last podcast. He had 5 steals against Kentucky. He needs to play that good on defense as well to lock down Gillespie. Jacoby Gillespie's been playing really good, so I'm curious to see what he looks like. And Nikhilian Torre also matches up pretty well against Boswell. They're both really similar sizes too, and he's a good defender plus defender as well. So they have the pieces to slow down the guards of Tennessee. But I think Tennessee is just going to make them shoot and bully them too much on the inside for it to really matter. If I was to hit their threes, they win this game borderline comfortably. Like I think they could win this game by up to 15 points as well if they're hitting the threes. I think it's gonna be very similar to the UVA game though, where UVA just can't hit outside shooting, can't get anything going in the inside. And I think Tennessee's gonna squeak this game out. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I think. What about you?
yeah, so I'm actually gonna agree with you. I'm gonna pick Tennessee. I really like Rick Barnes in the tournament. They have some real good pieces. Nate Ament, Gillespie. I really like him, and I really like Akpar inside. He had I think 5 blocks or so against UVA, who's, you know, a real big team in itself. So that was impressive. I have not been too high on Iowa State all year. I'm not sure what it is, but I have not been too high on them. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm actually going to pick Tennessee in this game.
That's ridiculous that we both have Tennessee winning this game. I mean, they're probably going to be like a 10-point underdog if I had to guess. But, you know, shout out to the Vols. I think they can get it done. I just think Iowa State, again, I'm putting money where my mouth is. I think Iowa State cannot shoot the ball. If they shoot the ball, they win this game very comfortably. So we'll see what happens. I can't believe that we're going to give this prediction and both of us have it being Tennessee versus Michigan. That's surprising to me. But I think this is where Tennessee's miraculous streak ends. I think Michigan is a really great team. Talked a lot of good about them. I had them winning the tournament from the beginning. I still think they're probably the team that's going to win. So, you know, they got depth. They're good at everything. Mara, they're big, so I think they can kind of compete with Tennessee. I don't really see a world where Tennessee bullies them like they would in maybe in Iowa State or Virginia. And then Mara, like defensively around the rim, he might get 5 blocks because it's either going to be like ridiculous shots trying to get over him, or they're going to, shoot a bunch of threes because they can't get the ball over him, frankly. Tennessee's going to struggle to score inside. I really like Michigan this game, probably also by 10 or so points. I can't keep predicting Michigan to blow out teams, but I really do think Michigan is that much better than the rest of the field over here. What about you?
I'm going to take a really bold take, and I'm going to say Tennessee's going to win this game.
I love it.
I don't know why I think that. I don't think it's always been, obviously Florida's out, but I don't think it's always been 1 seeds in the Final Four. So I'm gonna change it up a little bit, and I'm gonna go with Tennessee. I really like how they've been playing. They've got some real good pieces, like I mentioned. I really like Rick Barnes. So yeah, I'm gonna make a really bold take and say Tennessee's gonna win. I might regret it later, but we'll see.
I love hearing that. I mean, I would be surprised if Tennessee gets this far, but Rick Barnes is a very good coach. We talk about that in different podcasts, so it wouldn't shock me. It would definitely surprise me a lot that they beat Michigan to get into that position. Tennessee in the Final Four, man. We'll see, man. We'll see. My predicted Final Four is going to be Michigan State, Houston, Arizona, Michigan, which is interesting because I think that's what I actually picked in my original bracket. So I'm happy to see the consistency there. What about you?
Yeah, so my Final Four is Duke, Tennessee, Purdue, and Houston. Definitely some underdogs in there, but I really like who I picked. It's not consistent with who I had in my bracket. I had Florida in there, and obviously they got knocked out. But yeah.
Oh no, I definitely had Florida. What am I talking about? I had them in the final. I forgot I lost a ton of points off of that. So I guess I had them beating Houston. But the three of those are consistent. I definitely had Michigan State beating Duke out. And then Arizona, Michigan, I think are the 2 best teams coming out of that side of the bracket. Do you think Tennessee could beat Purdue?
Um, no, I think I'm gonna take Purdue in that game. That'll be a fun game if it all the dominoes fall and it happens. But I'm gonna have to go with Purdue. I don't think Tennessee's definitely not strong enough to win it all. The way they've been playing, I just like them to beat Michigan and move to the Final Four. But I think that'll probably end their run right there.
Yeah, I would love to see Tennessee get that far. And I think they do have a chance against Purdue now that I'm like looking at this matchup here, but it will be tough. It's going to have to be holding Purdue to, shooting bad numbers, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's all I have for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Open Throne podcast. Thank you again, Landon, for coming on. And we'll get back to you pretty soon with more basketball, talking about the Final Four and what we're going to predict with that.